Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Director Rocket.
Here.
Director Clayton.
Here.
Director Adams.
Here.
Here.
On to agenda item number 1, minutes of the regular meeting held May 25th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the written.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to agenda item number 2, committee reports.
President, we had a meeting of your admin and finance subcommittee, and we talked about ag leases and subleases there that are being proposed, and some actions that we think we need to take up. Director Brown might have a comment on.
Yeah, we just need to address some of the language in the leases and take a look at them. We've asked to have a meeting with one of the tenants here after they do see the board, so.
We also had a meeting of the business park committee with Mr. Tom Ross, and discussing Pioneer Park. Its lease is coming up, and Mr. Ross has any comments to make. Headway that's been made. I think Pioneer Park is going to be part of a larger conversation we have later in closed session. So remind me to mention that to you all. But we're working. The city's aware of it. We met with the assistant city manager yesterday, and he acknowledged that Pioneer Park was on the table for negotiation, and we get after it. And that's it for committee reports.
Pioneer Park is being rented by Santa Maria, right?
The city.
Yeah. We talked about that with Andrew.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 3, general manager report.
2 items to discuss. We met yesterday with city manager, assistant city manager, and the fire chief, the city of Santa Maria, to discuss our ARP services. I think it was a productive meeting. We came to an agreement on what we're going to agree to as far as our financial agreement for the coming fiscal year, and they told us, what they're doing to as far as a larger facility needs for the city and their partnership with the county for fire services, and that they'll have some of the ideas we presented as part of that discussion. We should hear. We're going to stay in touch with them, but they should have an idea what they want to do in this part of the city as far as facilities by March of next year, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I just want to add that not March of next year. It's tentative, but it's pretty quick. So it's going to be an exciting conversation.
One more item, I'm sorry. Just wanted to let you know that Carrie and I will be attending Jumpstart in Milwaukee this coming week, last Saturday. We'll be back Thursday for the Plains of Fame barbecue. Well, I think we're all looking forward to. That's it.
All right, moving on to item number 4, manager of finance and administration report.
I've provided the demand.
She's in New Zealand.
Via our accounting clerk copy.
Make a motion we approve.
Yeah, I'm making a second, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to item number 5, district council report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing to report other than I believe you already met my new colleague, Daniel Chung, and we're happy to be here tonight.
Moving on to item number 6, public session. Statements from the floor will be heard during public session. Request to speak forms are provided for those wishing to address the board. After completing the form, please give it to the clerk. Requests requiring board action will be referred to staff and brought on the next appropriate agenda. Members of the public are cordially invited to speak on agenda items as they occur. Staff reports covering agenda items are available for review in the offices of the general manager on the Tuesday prior to each meeting. The board will establish a time limit for receipt of testimony, in this case 3 minutes. The board reserves the right to establish further time limits for the receipt of testimony. And I do not have any, so I'm assuming you do know that I'm going to. As it comes up, feel free to We have no receipts. Moving on to number 7, presentation by Rick Wood from the California Special District Association regarding California Cooperative Liquid Assets Securities System class.
Good evening, and thank you for coming in. So I am Rick Wood. I'm the Finance Administration Director for California Special District Association. Big title for the bean counter, CSDA. I also serve in that capacity for the Special District Leadership Foundation, as well as the CSDA Finance Corporation. And CSDA has a tiny little program that I promised Martin I would talk about, that where we actually go help special districts that are struggling with accounting and finance. There's not a lot of medium and small special districts that can actually afford a CFO, a real, degree. So we have this tiny little program where Neil McCormick, our CEO, basically pimps me out to these districts. And I act as an interim finance director, educator, someone that actually goes in and actually helps these special districts get back in order and get their finances in place. And that's where I actually was this morning at Camarillo Healthcare District, working with them. They're one of those groups that I actually help. And I promised Martin, I would tell you that I'm also the interim CFO for the Special District Risk Management Authority. They lost their entire finance team back in November, and their board of directors came to CSDA and asked if they could borrow me for a while. And I have been filling in that capacity in the interim. I can tell you very, very happily that we have hired a new CFO over the past month, and he has begun putting his team back together. And they do have a new CEO, Brian Kelly, who is very, very well respected in the risk management arena in the country. So SDRMA is in good hands, and I cannot wait to move back to my real job. Do this kind of stuff. I do know the board members of SDRMA very, very well. I don't think, because it's on a ballot, that it would be great to talk about the individuals or endorse any of them in a public meeting, but I would be happy to go into a little detail with Martin about my relationship with those folks. I know there's a ballot to reelect them. I know your SDRMA members currently. So I'd be happy to talk to Martin about those kind of details. Today, I'm actually here because of a program that CSDA launched a little over a year ago. And typically, I do 3 workshops a year on investing public money for special districts up and down the state. And so typically I'm doing that type of presentation where we talk about the California Government Code and what public entities can, by law, invest in. And I'll tell you that about 2 years ago, CSDA got a little discouraged by the options for diversification that are actually available to our members. Special districts. And so we have always had a great partnership with the League of California Cities, and they were even more unhappy than we were. And so we got together and we decided we were going to try and find a way to provide an investment diversification tool to special districts that was a little easier to use than LAIF and paid a higher return than what we as local governments are used to through the local agency investment fund. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against LAIF. Every one of my special districts that I work with, we do have an accountable right? And we use them as part of the diversification strategy that I always teach. I always say, have a great banking relationship. If you don't have one, I can help you. Use LEF or use your county treasury. Lake and the county treasury pools tend to be relatively safe. Not always the highest rate of return, but they're decent places to actually park public money, and that's what they're for. And then the third piece is what I'm going to introduce today. We found that there's really not a lot out there that you can hire some hired gun to go invest your money for them and pay them a whole bunch of fees. And we were trying to get away from that and try to find something that met the California government code. And so if I say 53,600 more times than you can stand, you're welcome to throw something at me. But that's the government code number that we have to follow as public agencies when we're investing public money. So we decided we couldn't find what we wanted, so we decided to build our own. And so we created a joint powers authority along with the League of California Cities that is called California Class. And it is a partnership between CSDA and the League. And I'll talk about the public entities that can actually invest with it. But it truly is a partnership put together with the intention of providing a diversification tool to special districts and cities. So the Joint Powers Authority that we created, it actually officially, the JPA launched July 1st of 2022. CSDA has appointment authority for 2 of the trustees. The League of California Cities has appointment authority of 2 of the trustees, and they serve specific terms and have to be reappointed, and there is that democratic process that goes along with it. And then the 4 of them, of those appointments, the ability to appoint 1 additional 5th member. And in this case, they appointed Parker Hunt, who's the treasurer tax collector for Tehama County. So we've got county representation on the board, we've got city representation on the board, and we've got special district representation. So from the special district side, Ryan Klossnitzer, who's the general manager of the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, he is CSDA's immediate past president. Advanced degree in finance, guy knows his mosquitoes and knows his money. One of my districts that I work with is the Contra Costa Mosquito District, and Paula is one of the most brilliant scientists on the planet. And I walked in and told her, I know nothing about mosquitoes and don't want to. And she said, good, because I know nothing about finance, and that's your job. That's where, but Ryan Klossnitzer knows both sides of it. He's a good guy. And then the other special district appointment is Margaret Moshe. Margaret is the current top finance or title something, right? It's too far away, I can't read it. But she's like the CFO for West Basin Water District, which is a fairly large water district in the LA Southern California area. I don't know if you'll recognize any of these acronyms, but Margaret is on the executive committee for GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, which is a nationwide organization that does nothing but accounting. She is the past president for CSMFO, the Society of Municipal Finance Officers. She's on the executive committee for CMTA, County Municipal Treasurers Association. This woman's resume I would kill you for. And she's actually on, well, she accepted being appointed to the board of directors. So that's the governing structure of California Class of the JPA. Then they hired US Bank to be the holder of the money. And when you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, there's not very many entities out there that will touch public money. US Bank is one of the few that will actually act as that trustee. And then Public Trust Advisors is the investment advisors and distribution agent. ORIC is our legal counsel. They're a very large governmental
related, you guys know, you can probably tell them better than I can who are this. And so they're our legal counsel, and then Clifton Larson Allen is the audit firm that will do the audit on an annual basis for us. So that rounds out the way the JPA is structured. Our board of trustees are all volunteers. They're doing this because we've asked them to do it. They're not paid in any way. Who can invest in California Class? Any public entity can invest in California Class. Now, we set it up because we really are more trying to do this for you guys, for special districts. And the league was really more interested in cities, but we also recognize there's a lot of public entities out there that don't have this kind of diversification option. So we will take any public and invest into this program. There's two different funds that are available for us to invest public money into. I'm gonna focus on one of them for the moment, the Prime Fund. So the Prime Fund, by SEC rules, cannot have a weighted average maturity of their investments of more than 60 days and have it called a stable net asset value fund. And what that means is if you're familiar with Blake, it means $1 in today and $1 out tomorrow with interest, no loss of principal. So that's what that stable net asset value means, and that's what that prime portion of the fund means. So the fund is actually AAA rated, and it gets rated every week by Standard & Poor's and Fitch, and that is the highest rating that they will actually give these kinds of funds. So it's rated as high as you can get. There are no limitations to how much money you can put in, how much money you can take out. There's no limitations on the number of transactions you can make in a month. This is not a federal money market account that restricts you to 6 withdrawals in a month. This is literally what's called a local government investment pool in the government code, and you can make as many transactions as you want.
What's the rate of return on investment?
I'm gonna show you in a minute.
Oh.
You're stealing my thunder. So that's basically the Prime Fund. Now, in the current investment rate, in investment world, in the environment that we're in right now, interest rates are popping up. Maybe they're gonna start to flatten out now. We'll have to see what the Feds do. But in a rising interest rate environment, the shorter you are on the yield curve, the more money you're gonna make and the quicker you're going to make it. So that's why I'm just talking about the Prime Fund, because I'm gonna show you, but it's making 5.2% today. The Prime Fund is gonna continue. Every time the Feds pop up, it's going to, because of the shortness of the pool, it's going to pick up that extra interest rate very, very quickly. So the next question that I always get is, what do we do when interest rates flatten or start to come down? That's what that enhanced cash fund is over there on the right-hand side. We have not launched it yet. I would not recommend putting money in it at the moment. Because in the interest rate environment that we're in, it's going to fall behind the short-term investments. Because it's really truly meant for when interest rates are flat, stable, or dropping. Because then you go a little bit further out on the yield curve and you continue to pick up those higher interest rates. So probably in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll come back and start talking to all of our members about the timing of launching the enhanced cash fund. But right now, the place to put your money is as short as you can. When that becomes another conversation, we'll start talking about the enhanced cash, launch that as well. Public trust advisors. So there are investment advisors. The very first question that I get from most districts is, why the hell are you trying to talk me into putting public money into something that's so brand new? That's just simply not the case. Public trust advisors have been investing public money in California for decades. They've been creating these kinds of pooled programs across the country for decades. They manage over $70 billion of public money in the United States. The only thing that is new is that the League of California Cities and CSBA got together and we created this JPA and hired them to manage it. So that's the only thing that's really new is the JPA. Public trust investing public money in California has been going on for many, many years. They have offices in LA. But it is in fact the only thing they do is invest public money. So I mean, their resume is up there and their years and decades of time actually investing public money. So this is by no means anything new. When we first created this, and again, I told you I was going to talk about 53600, the primary pieces of the government code are safety, liquidity, and yield. So safety, meaning preservation of principal. And we talked about that when I mentioned the stable net asset value fund. Liquidity, meaning you can get to your money when you want it, when you need it. California class, if you need money today and you put in your request by 11 a.m., it's in your bank account that afternoon. Any amount that you want. There's no limits in transactions. And then yield is the final piece that the government code talks about, and that's the piece that has typically been missing with some of the things like LAKE, the Local Agency Investment Fund, is that they're always way behind on the curve when it comes to interest rates. But it's safe, it's liquid, and it does provide a reasonable interest rate. Most public agency investment codes or investment policies talk about using LAKE as the comparison, as the benchmark. I'll try to earn at least what LAKE does, and then try to find something else to diversify. And so I skipped too many. So California class, again, there's no minimum balance and there's no penalty if you have zero balance. There's no minimum or maximum transactions that you have to make in a month. There's no fees, and I want to explain that. There's no annual fee. There's no minimum balance fee. There's no interest rate fee. There's no transaction fees. There's no wire fees. There's no ACH fees. There's no moving money around kinds of fees. So how do they make money? The Joint Powers Agreement allows for an administrative fee of up to 15 basis points on an annualized basis. So 15 basis points is 15 tenths of 1%. So the JPA allows that, and that's what pays for the lawyers, the auditors, and the investment advisor things. So LAKE has the same thing. There's this kind of tier based on how much money you actually have in your account. So right now, California class is doing fine, and they're assessing a 5% fee, 5 basis point fee. Big difference. 5 basis point fee. And it is net of your investment return, meaning if you get a return of $100, you really were 105 cents because it's net what you actually get on your return. So that 5.2% I told you, it's really a tiny bit more than that, but that's what you're actually paying. This is an example of the portal, and for folks that use LAKE on a daily and regular basis, they look at this and go, "Holy crap, is it really that easy?" And it really actually is. you can open as many sub-accounts as you want. And what I mean by that, I have a lot of special districts that have a very solid reserve policy, and they like to keep those reserves in separate accounts. You can actually, just by clicking on that button, you can open additional sub-accounts to put those different funds in. And I have a bunch of cemetery districts that get a lot of endowments. And the folks that provide them want that money, they want to see it in like its own bank account. They want to see it separate. They just want to see what it does. And this makes that kind of process very, very simple. Now, if you're an arrogant, controlling accountant, like maybe the guy standing at the podium, I can't put it all on one account because I figured it out on the balance sheet, internally on my own books. But there are those groups that really want to be able to see it separately. This is a great way to actually do that. This is the profile portal. And I think this one's important because this is where you have the ability to say who can see and do what. Meaning you can have it so that Martin can go in and make transactions, and the 5 of you get notice that he did it, and you can actually go in and look at the accounts. So there's a ton of ability to change that profile page so that you have the ability to move money. You can have it so that Bernica can set it up and Martin has to go in and approve it for it to actually happen. You can do it so that Bernica can make the transaction, Martin gets notified, you guys can still go look at it. You guys can set that up however you want in this program. And you can't put my name on there because they actually do their due diligence to find out if you really are board members and if you really are affiliated. So, I mean, I tried, it didn't work. This is the portal that you actually make the transactions in, and this is one of the few that have the ability to make the transactions by ACH instead of just wire. And for us accountants, we feel like we can manage money on an overnight basis, which is what ACH is, and wire tends to be same day, and wire tends to be expensive on the banking side. Banks tend to charge fairly substantial fees to make a wire transfer. But you can just do it by ACH if you're okay getting the money the next day. And again, they have put millions of dollars into security, making sure that cybersecurity is one of their primary things. There's a line on there that says bank account. You can't go in there and put your Cayman Islands bank account in there. It won't work. I tried. You actually have to have it go through their security process where they check it out, they test it, they make sure that it's associated with the district, and then you can't change it without going through that process again. So that's not really a drop down that you can change it to whatever you want. It has to go through that security process. And then you go through the rest of it and you transfer your money. I mean, it's as simple as, I love the ACH feature because I can just pull it from my bank. This will be fun someday. If there's a participant-to-participant ability within this program where I told you that I'm the CFO for CSBA and SDLF. We give money back and forth to each other. SDLF is a participant and so is CSBA. I can just transfer it directly here instead of having to write out a check as CSBA, deposit it at SDLF and blah, blah, blah. The counties are super excited about this because if the county has the program open, they can pay property tax to any of their cities, other local governments, participant to participant, and just transfer the money instead of issuing checks. So that'll be a lot more fun later on. And this is basically just showing you the history of the information that's available. It never goes away. A lot of banks will give you 6 months worth of history and that's it. This will go back to the beginning and when we very first opened it. California Class pays interest on a monthly basis, not quarterly like Lakeland. You get your statements by 10 a.m. on the first business day of a new month. instead of the 15th of the end of the quarter. So your money's gonna compound much quicker, through California class. And you asked me what the interest rates were, and, there's my slide. California class is paying just under 5.2%. Late this morning was 3.11. 2% of interest on $1 million is real money. And I like to show this for folks that are financially savvy. This is what they invest. This is the pie chart. This is how it's diversified. These are the quality investments that California class was invested in as of 5/31, whatever the county date. So we make this available to our participants on a weekly basis, so that you can actually see what your holdings are. So again, you're not depositing money in a bank. This is not that kind of thing. You are investing. And these are the investments that you own. And that's the guarantee that you have that your money is safe, is the quality of the investments.
That was just an example, right?
That's
Just an example.
that was as of a point in time in May. That was the picture. They give it to us every Monday of what it actually is.
Can it go backwards?
Pardon me?
Can it go backwards?
Meaning,
Meaning that it's less value, you paid $1 million and now it's worth $950, that's backwards.
No, he said the net value thing that we're at $1 million, we're gonna pull our $1 million back out with interest.
with interest.
Okay, so.
That's the whole point.
You never lose
is that
principal.
You never lose money. Preservation of principal is the primary thing in the California government code. And because this is such a short duration program, you're never gonna lose your principal. Now, public trust advisors will never stand here and guarantee you that it can happen. It just never has.
So it's possible that it can go backwards.
And
It just never has.
late it never has for 70 years. Public trust advisors can do this.
Financial advisors said it can't go backwards, it's gone backwards.
Yeah, this is built so that it can.
Replacements financial advisor?
Yes.
Is it guaranteed? Are you guys guaranteeing it?
The SEC will not let me stand here and tell you that it's guaranteed. Neither will LAIF. LAIF is not guaranteed. Everyone has this myth and believes that LAIF's guaranteed by the state. It's not. It's guaranteed by the investments that they own and the quality of the investments in their portfolio. Same thing with this. The quality of the investments and the short duration of them is why they've never not met a redemption by his point of going backwards. They've never not met a redemption.
On $1 million investment, what do you think you'd make in a month?
If I had access to the portal that I showed Martin, if we could, can I bring up the internet?
Yeah. Yeah, we want the-
We'll just take an educated guess.
Oh, well, I can do that. There's a portal, there's a calculator on the actual portal that you can do at any point in time, but $1 million
There's two. 40,000 divided by 12, that should be.
is about $4,333 a month. Or $52,000 a year.
2 months never paid for the
We did this with Martin and I plugged in I plugged in a number of $9 million. You had put the 9 million in July 1st when the pool launched. You would have earned $315,000 from July 1 to now.
We left tens of thousands of dollars on the table theoretically.
Oh, no, we met before, we had a meeting a while back. Right? Didn't I meet you one time in the weekend? You cannot.
Not to the Santa Maria Airport District. The first time I've been here was when I was here the other day.
You may have had a discussion about this class, I believe
Yeah.
that was.
Well, they were at a CCD meeting, but they heard about it in December. And then that's when we started.
Renita was talking about the meeting there, that's. where-
Correct, yes, that's when we started this process.
She's been bugging me for months to come and do this, and I just been busy, and I'm so sorry, that's my fault. That it hasn't happened before now, and that for Martin, I had to show him that $315,000 that he could have earned had he come last July.
So you're gonna make that.
Moving forward.
I wish I could do that kind of stuff, but, this right here, basically, and I think your district's already done it, your investment policy is what guides what you can do. So the government code tells us what we can do, and then internally, every special district has their own investment policy. Whether or not you want to use California class, I don't care. Well, I do, because you're leaving money on the table. I shouldn't say that. If you have an investment policy and you're concerned that it's not up to date or doesn't comply with the California government code, I'll review it for free. I'll let you know. And I'll give you the recommendations that I may have to do that. I think we already went down that path. Already started that.
Mhm.
But that's what that slide is all about. And joining is easy as filling out the participation agreement, and then moving the money. I think that answer. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. One is, the 5% would be good. The inflation rate's been around 8 or 9%. And what do you personally see as a balance shifting to where maybe the inflation rate is lower than the actual interest rate? Then,
Well, the interest rate is more tied to the Federal Open Market Commission, the federal funds rate. So it's right now 5.25 to 5.5, I think is what the Fed rate is. And so that's what they issue treasuries at. And then each time that they pop that up, the shortness of our program actually picks that up really, really quick. The feds are raising the federal rate to try to make it too hard for all of us to borrow money and to try to force that inflation rate to come down. So it has a correlation because of the way the feds are fighting with the inflation. But the Fed interest rate and or California classes rate and the inflation rate don't have any correlation except for what the feds are doing with the Fed rate.
but right now, it looks like they're pretty much the same number. You gave about 5 or 6% here. And
They're about 5 points.
the Fed rate's about 5%, and the inflation rate's been around 8 to 10%. And you were in the professional financial business.
I am.
Great respect for you. What's your outlook for the getting a better balance between inflation rate and investment? Because what happens now, you take out your savings, even though it's more, you buy less with it.
So the federal government got themselves in trouble by being late to the table. And doing these interest rates as quickly as they did. You know that bank that fell in the San Jose area? They went so far out on the yield curve that as interest rates started to pop up, and when interest rates got to be like 3-4+%, people started pulling their money because they were making more. They could pull their cash out of the bank and put it in a CD or in a money market fund and make more money than what that bank was doing. And that bank had leveraged the future to a point to where they couldn't make the margin. And that caused that bank to fail. There's a lot more examples like that out there where there are banks that have gone way out, and the federal government is now having to kind of play this game of, do we continue to raise interest rates and cause banks to fail? Do we continue to raise interest rates and try to fight that inflation number? They've got themselves between a rock and a hard spot at the moment, where they need to raise interest rates to keep the inflation down, but as they do it, they're gonna make more banks fail. So my personal, I don't think they're gonna raise rates anymore. I think the risk of bank failures is worse than the risk of inflation staying at 7%. Is that the right answer? I mean, you ask 500 economists and you get 500 answers to that question. But this public accountant being on the conservative side, I think interest rates are gonna stay at least where they're at, maybe a little bit more, and stay there for a while, which makes this an opportunity for us as public entities, stuff some money in there and earn some interest. I'm old enough to remember the 1980s and what interest rates did. And that time period has come back around a tiny bit, not to any degree like it was in the 80s. But this is an opportunity for public entities to take advantage of programs like this. CS, I'm not making any money off of this. I'm trying to do something for my members so that they can do something. But I did invest all of CSK's in that.
Second question. Is there a political content to the investments that are made from your organization? Some, for instance, some investment groups do things that probably would harm the United States because they invest in enemies of the United States. Or they may be taking leaps on commodities. The commodities seem to have gone way up. But what are the types of investments does your organization make?
Right there.
Well, I see categories and categories. But
There's no equities whatsoever. So the folks at Channel Islands Community Services District asked me a similar question. They said, I want to know if this is a green fund. I said, well, no, it's not a green
There's no
fund.
names on that screen up there, it just says category name.
Right, and the types of investments, there's no names because they're investing in treasuries. And treasuries are federal government issued. They're investing in repurchase agreements. Those are agreements between banks for overnight lending. They're very, very high quality and very, there's no equities. This is not, the California government code won't let us invest in the stock market or in equities in any way. We can invest in some high quality commercial paper, but it's like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It's not commercial bank down the street. So when you're investing $700 or $70 billion, you're not investing in a local stock market type investment. You're investing in Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, repurchase agreements, treasuries, things that you and I can't get to if we wanted to. But is it a green fund? There may be some state that issued a bond that is very super high quality, that the government code allows us to invest in, that some environmentalist somewhere didn't like. That could be. But it's not the intention. But it's not the intention either. They don't invest in anything foreign. They can't. Government code won't let us. So it's as conservative as you can possibly get what they invest in. So no, they don't invest in Shell or Chevron or any of that kind of stuff. They can't.
Thank you. It clears up the question very well.
Good.
Any other questions? No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
You want this back now?
So, Mr. President, what I'd like to do is for Nika to get back from vacation and maybe we can put this on the next agenda. And you can give staff direction on what you want us to do for this.
We've talked about this quite a bit. I think we could probably get more information, but probably bring it up to the board action.
Yes, I think we can move quickly on this for you, allow you to make a decision.
All right. When was Bernie get back?
14th, so next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, Rick.
Well, I'm driving back to Sacramento, so I'm going home.
That's 5 hour drive.
Thank you.
Once you have great. Resolution 96, a resolution of the Board of Directors of San Diego Public Airport District adopting the appropriations such as limitations for fiscal year 2023 through 2024 under California Constitution, Article number as amended, and implementing statutes.
So that's our budget, and ask for your approval.
I make a recommendation to approve.
I will second that. All in favor? President Johnson.
President Moran,
Yes.
Director Basket,
Yes.
Director Clayton,
Yes.
Director Adams.
Yes.
Director Brown.
Yes. Moving on to item number 9, adoption of resolution 927, a resolution of the governing body of the San Diego Airport District for the election of directors to the Special District Risk Management Authority Board of Directors.
You'll recall this item came up before, and as Rick offered, I'd be happy to talk with him and see if I can provide some more details on this, if you'd like to continue it, or to decide which members of the Risk Management Authority you'd like your board to vote for.
Yeah, last time I put this, it said, there was one, I think there were 5 that names there, and I like the last 2 and the first one, and there was no disagreement, but somebody may have a change.
I think there's not a press, we have to allow this to do it, when we let him talk, and then
Let's see what we're doing.
come back and. Jay Moore can compare notes to see, I'm not opposed to that, we'll just be.
So we'll see if we can, again, we have plenty of time. See if I can get some information for you.
So Dave was saying Swan, Claypool, and Raffleson.
Yeah, the last one, bottom 2, I think you're.
Yeah, I agree with you. Risk management. I mean, they're all incumbent, they've been there. It's not one.
The special district, yeah, that was,
Well, I'll make a motion to support Swan, Claypool, and Robinson.
The incumbents.
Yes.
Can you give me just a second of director to special district risk management? What is it?
You may recall, Rick just explained to it what it is. It's a group that we're a member of that provides risk management support to us.
It's essentially our self-insurance pool that we're a member of. Instead of having private insurance, the SDRMA is a joint powers authority, similar to what he's talking about with this investment fund. Joint powers authority allows government agencies to use collectively powers they can use individually. We have the ability to self-insure if we wanted to. Instead of self-insuring, we belong to pool, but that is an authority of a lot of special districts across the state. We all pool our money for self-insurance so that if there is some kind of big hit, if we got hit for $20 million or something like that, we wouldn't have to pay that out of our own pocket. Instead, it would come from the pool and then it's paid back over time. So anytime we have a claim, a liability claim that's within what's covered by SDRMA, much like an insurance policy, that's where it comes from. So this is simply the board of directors that manages that.
How did we get the names on this list?
You're right.
I mean, how did those get generated?
It was sent to us from the authority for your board's consideration.
The three that Dave and Chuck are interested in are the current incumbents.
I have no objection to that either.
I got no problem either.
And that's where they go into.
There was a motion, I don't think.
Second. I'll second.
President Moran,
The incumbents.
Director Basket,
Yeah, the 3 that names that were mentioned, and that we've all discussed here. Yes.
Director Clayton,
The 3 incumbents.
Director Adams.
Yes.
Director Brown.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to item 10, authorization for the president and secretary to execute the service agreement between the district and Lee Hunt for air service development consulting services.
Thanks for that explanation, Mr. George, a second ago. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
Yes, Mr. President, this is our agreement with Mead Hunt, as you just described it, for Trina to continue as our airline service development consultant.
I make a motion that we approve.
I got a question. How much of an increase did they do?
Minimal.
No, it's
This is the exact number if you want.
gotta be just a real small bump, not, okay, that's all.
And that's just a minor point. You as president, you won't make the first motion.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion.
All in favor? Okay, thanks. Michelle, we have a second, we have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item number 11, authorization for the president and secretary to execute the second amendment of service agreement between the district and the Woodrow Group, Inc. for government affairs consulting services.
Who's this?
And
I'd make the motion that we would do that. I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item 12, authorization for tuition reimbursement for one staff member.
This is ours Lawrence continued education, taking advantage of the district's benefit for college reimbursement. She's attending Amarillo University. And this is one more step, one more class she's taking towards her bachelor's degree.
I'll make the motion that we just,
I'll second the motion on that one for staff member, but
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item number 13, discussion and direction of staff regarding a hangar waitlist application from David Baskin.
Would you like to address this, Terry? You've been working on it directly, not to put you on the spot, but
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an item that came to my attention this week. Mr. Baskin had submitted a waitlist application. In our current eligibility and use policy for the hangars, we can require any tenant who has previously been evicted in order to get on the wait list, he must get board approval, which requires 4/5 vote. And in addition to that, if the board does approve him to get on the wait list, he would have to pay back all fees at the time of getting on the wait list. And he would need to have an aircraft that he already owns in order to get on the wait list. So we look for your vote.
my recommendation is to give him back his $250. He's not eligible to have a hangar.
I'll make a note. The reason for the eviction was no reason, court records. So I believe that all of that stuff should go away. That's my opinion. But if you all decide, you decide. But I will state. And Josh was there and he agreed. There's no reason for the eviction. So you're applying rules for people who were evicted for cause. I was not. Well, this is a different deal. And you decide.
What I understand the cause was, is that you owe 2,000 some odd dollars for some sort of, I think it was council fees or something. What was the $2,000?
It was as per the contract, it was to offset the cost for the. It was attorney's fee. The attorney was. The prevailing party.
The judge awarded that, is that correct?
Correct.
Right, and so that's 2,000 you had to pay back. He said he didn't realize that had to be paid back. Okay, whatever. Bottom line is, if he did pay that back and falls in line with the airplane and everything, I say, why not? We gave Pepper Garcia's 10,000 chances at 17,000, etc. Why not give this guy a chance? And if he pays the $2,000 back and it complies like he's supposed to and get a plane and everything else, he should get the same opportunity. Because that's what we did with Pepper Garcia's. We should do the same over here. And not to mention, excuse me, Dave, not to mention that I find you a very good veteran, one that we should be standing up and taking care of. Because this guy was in a chopper pilot in the thick of it all over here. This guy deserves another opportunity to have that hangar. He does. And if he pays the money that he owes the airport and he's getting liquidated on everything else, then he should have an opportunity. My vote would be that.
There's no point. Follow up, complete information, very important, have complete. I offered to pay the 2,000 something.
You said you had that in writing, you said you were gonna produce it, I haven't seen
Oh,
it, has anybody here seen it?
You'll get it.
You said that last time.
Well, I've been busy with other things, but you will get it. I have never misrepresented anything to anybody that I know of, and if I ever do, if I make a mistake, I correct it. So, and there was no reason for the eviction.
The eviction was for just, we're getting on the track.
I have to, I do have to, since we're on the record, here, I do have to correct the statement. In the unlawful detainer, I told the judge accurately that Director Vasquez's month-to-month tenancy was terminated on a 30-day notice. It wasn't terminated on a 3-day notice to perform or quit. So in that sense, because of the legal procedure, it was terminated on a 30-day notice. I did not say, and I never said that there was no reason for the
No.
eviction, so I want to make sure that that's clear.
I read the transcript. You said that.
You said that.
I read the transcript and we could look at it again if you like. Maybe I'm wrong because that's what it said. I read it very clearly.
I don't have it in front of me, but my,
But that's
just,
what it was.
okay. All I'm saying is that the termination was on a 30-day notice on a month-to-month lease. I just want to clarify that. I don't have anything
And
else.
I'm
to
of
add.
the opinion if he pays it all back, whatever it is, the $2,000+ dollars.
He can't
they
pay it
had a
back.
plan.
He cannot pay it back,
Why is that?
because it's been, do whatever they do in bankruptcy, it's gone, we can't even ask him. Am I right with that? It's an uncollectible debt once it's gone through bankruptcy.
Yeah, I don't think the discharge has been entered, but seeking to collect discharge debts would potentially be a problem. I defer to Director Clayton about, and knows more about bankruptcy.
So then if that's the case, then he needs to be able to produce a plan to show you that he can get on the waiting list then.
No, it's not, it says all the policy.
One piece of it, he needs to own an aircraft.
Got it. But he's
Not-
also willing to pay back to the airport the $2,000 to the airport so that they didn't lose anything. And then be able to get on your waiting list so that you can get an airplane to be able to get an airplane to get on your waiting list.
Correct. If it would be helpful, the way the policy is written, the first step is there has to be a 4/5 vote. Then we would have to look at the issue of attorney's fees, which would be related to the actual eviction itself, but we'll have to look at that, and I'll have to talk to bankruptcy counsel to make sure that we don't run afoul of any issues with the bankruptcy law. But that's, at this point, until there's a 4/5 vote, we don't even get to that step.
Well, my position is right now is there's a bankruptcy thing going on, I don't know where this all is gonna shake down, where it's gonna end up. I'd like to finish that trip first and then look at this again. So today I would be a no. That doesn't mean I would look at it at a later date.
So in terms of discussion and direction, I think we should table this. Table it.
I think we need to hand him back his money until he can reapply after it's trying to check wants to do it that way.
So we're not accepting the application, so we need to return.
Yeah, I mean, we can vote on it if you want, I mean, that would be the official way to do it.
Under the policy is written, unless there's a 4/5 vote in favor, then we can't go to the next step of adding him to the hangar wait list. Under the policy as it sits there now.
We gotta get through the bankruptcy first, and we're gonna go through all the liquidation and everything else first. We gotta get a discharge, and then when the dust settles, then I suggest, same as Mr. Adams said, we go back and look at it.
I feel this is premature. So let's go ahead and table it and. Moving on to item number 14, report from staff regarding the draft cleanup and abatement order for 2986 Industrial Parkway, San Diego.
Would you like to take that, Josh?
Sure.
It's your letter that was our response.
Yeah, you'll see in the board packet, and you had received before, the water board issued a draft cleanup and abatement order with regard to the old Simcoe site that used to be airport property from 1964 to 1968. Once we received that along with the city and the county, we worked with Groveman Height and some engineers engineering firm that was retained to prepare comments to the draft report, or the draft cleanup and abatement order. The city and the county did so as well. Essentially, our comments on the draft order fell down to a few different issues, but the main issue being that the draft order named the airport as a actual discharger of contaminants on the property. The main goal of our response to that was to demonstrate that the airport as a landowner, not as an operator of the site, they're not legally qualified as a discharger because we didn't know that anything was being used there that shouldn't have been. Not only that, the laws did not exist to make any discharges illegal at that time, and the water board itself did not exist to make anything that was allegedly done illegal at that time. It's all contained in the letter that's in your packet, but that's the broad point number one. Point number two was just to also point out that if the water board is going forward with the cleanup and abatement order, they should also include the Department of Defense that operated the military airfield out here during World War II and had many underground storage tanks on the site. And so we laid out the case for including them potentially as an actual discharger, as they were operating on the site and they were storing things in underground tanks. So the next step now is most likely we will get a response to our comments from the water board. That's not necessarily guaranteed. They could just set it to be considered by the board itself. And when I say from the water board, what we're getting is from staff. And that's why it's a draft cleanup and abatement order. The staff puts it together. They give it to us. We get the chance to make comments. We give it back to them. They can either respond or they can take our comments, do what they want with them, and go ahead and go to the water board for consideration and adoption of the CAO. It seems that fairly unlikely that that would happen before, I think, August or September, but we'll see at this point. So this is really just a sort of informational item for you all. Also, I can handle any general questions, but obviously to the extent that your questions would get into something that would be attorney-client privilege, it'd be better to discuss that in closed session at another point. Director Basket.
Had the same question last time, and the answer was the amount of actual pollution in the water is unknown, period.
Correct.
Has that changed?
No, the first part of the what happens under the CAO involves monitoring to determine what is actually there and the extent of it.
And then assuming that there is pollution that exceeds a certain limits established by the various state or regulatory agencies, what has been discussed as far as putting, as I mentioned before, and do the same thing in San Francisco on contaminated water source. It's, you put the pump down in the well and you pump the stuff out and you run through a filter and you run it and you run it until eventually the water is clean, assuming that the water is a fairly stable situation. Has any consideration been given to look at what can be done to mitigate or clean up the water that's there, assuming that it just doesn't keep flowing in and flowing out?
That's what the cleanup and abatement order is supposed to accomplish. It's first figuring out the extent of contamination, and then only the cleanup and abatement part of that does involve doing things exactly like what you're talking about, which is taking the water out of the ground and filtering it and then putting it back in.
If I read this correctly, there was one point in time that one of the people that were operating over there was doing that.
In the
And then they ceased and desist what they were doing.
Correct. And then the issue just kind of went dormant for a number of years.
Any idea because they got it clean and it was okay, or did they go lose interest and you're kicked off? No,
They lost interest.
I think the legal terminology for it would be they just moved on to other things. I'm being a little sarcastic. That's not really the legal terminology, but no, they just sort of abandoned the project. So we will, if there's not any other questions, we will obviously keep you updated when we expect some sort of response, either scheduling it to be heard by the board or some further response to our comments.
Any other questions? All right, we will take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 7:08 for closed session.
Yeah. You're through.
We have a closed session with board corrective actions. Moving on to item number 16, director's comments. And let's go ahead and start.
Several times I brought up energy as being something that's gonna be critical. We're gonna have more failures in the national than the local, and state grids. And I was happy that we've got at least a start on getting about 430 kilowatts out here on, coming up in the future, next year, I think we'll have a little shade over the cars, generating some things. Much more serious, in my view, as the grid gets more fragile, and it is getting more fragile. When something breaks, there's now a 2-year delay in getting replacements in for something that broke. And I think the idea of making Santa Maria Airport energy independent, so we can live without the grid, will be a great benefit, not just to the airport, but also to the surrounding community. And at one time, Gary, we talked about RFI or RFP for somebody come and analyze the airport and see what kind of alternative sources of energy can be created here to make us energy independent. The personal goal is still to see this airport become energy independent and supply electricity to everybody that's a tenant on the airport. Right now, if it goes out, power, of course, has got its own independent source, but they've been stumbling around and told me with flashlights at times, when we didn't have power in their town. And your lights in your office will go out when there's an energy cut off, and you got to move over to the terminal in order to fix things. We can fix that. The cash, let's fix those things, because I believe we're going to be more and more in danger of national grid failures as more and more electrical devices get plugged in the way of cars, trucks, and other things. Hopefully we'll have some electric airplanes in here. So I would like to say is keep us focused on getting Santa Maria Airport from energy independent, keep the lights on when everybody other place goes dark. That's enough of that.
I think we all can get behind that, so I don't have any comments.
I think we, as a whole, we've done fantastic things. And we're gonna continue to do fantastic things. And we have been appointed in this position, and I want us all to start acting like it. So. That's my comment.
Okay, some interesting stuff today, kind of like the CSDA stuff, I think we need to look at that, we are heavy, especially with the return on the money. Here, the other day, Dave was talking about energy independence, having a cocktail with John Taggart, we're talking about microgrids. So I looked at these microgrids, you have military bases going to microgrids, you have hospitals that are going to microgrids. Sounds like John has some information on it. Let's get into it. I think it's maybe something we should have our engineer kind of explore for us a little bit here and see what we can do with it. So it's kind of new technology. When you mentioned it, I was kind of researching a little bit. And it's an area that's really growing. You mentioned, I mean, there's like taxes for like individuals, or maybe some government funds for it. I don't really know the whole project, but it sounds like John has got a handle on it. I think maybe it's something we should stick him on and have him take a look at it.
I agree.
Well, that's my comment.
Good. I have no comment.
Item number 17. I'd like to make the motion to adjourn.
Agree.
I mean, it's
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.